Well, I finally finished reading the Saint Seiya manga, and to say up front, I left feeling really positive about it. Now, the manga is not finished, so I can't really do more than my general impressions of the 58 or so chapters finished. That's more than enough to give you my general idea of the manga. The stick of Saint Seiya is the all-female mains, set in a time period of the classic, a very special group of unknown saints known as Sonatas, personal bodyguards of Athena herself. The main characters are these young warriors in various stages of experience, from newbies to some basically training all their life. Now we'll break down my simple pros and cons. We keep things simple here, folks. First thing everyone will notice is the amazing art. The main characters look good, classic characters look alive and charismatic just from a glance. To the point I was looking forward to her versions of each character every time they were hinted. There are moments where the background, or rather a large object like a tree, will really make you stop and just look at how detailed and pretty it is. And beautiful. It has a way of uncringently, if that is a word, probably not, of representing and pointing out the fact that they are females and strong without it becoming overbearing. Most spin-offs use lesser saints like bronze and silver terribly, but through pacing and the right type of villain, all ranks have some level of importance to them. I find the characters and dialogue to be very charming and cute. The dialogue in this series as it pertains to certain characters can be really silly. It's hard for me to explain, but it's kinda like when you watch a cartoon and the cartoon is watching a cartoon that's a parody of a superhero. A very knightish fairy tale fight for justice way of talking. The manga does very well in fitting into the classic manga story-wise, even tries to correct some plot holes. And finally, the make or break of any Saint Seiya series, the Goat Saints. Thankfully, they are handled very well here, better than I thought going in. Some could use a bit more screen time, but they are handled good and have the best and most interesting things going on. So once again, they steal the show. The character development flows very well and natural in this series, more so than say Lost Canvas. And now the cons. Could be a few more of them tiggle bitties. Art is great, but sometimes the chins and noses are way too sharp and awkward looking. It also suffers from a bit of same face syndrome. I never really had an opinion of anime and manga that have eyebrows visible through hair. Now I do. It's bad and distracting. Post time skip, while not bad, the around 15 or so chapters of character and story build up are sluggish, while the plot for the most part fits very well. Aside from characters knowing things before they should, the personality changes of some, like Sayori, she is way smarter and wiser early on than the series ever suggested. The personality of Scorpio Milo is something I simply can't make sense out of compared to the classic. They're just different people. Speaking of Milo, you know every writer secretly has their favorite and have their own opinion of who the strongest of the bunch are. But someone called Milo one of the strongest goat saints. I stopped and laughed for a good few seconds and thought, based on what? Now here are the biggest issues with this manga. The action is just kinda bad, and a lot of that has to do with the art. As good as the art is, it cannot make convincing attacks. At least not original techniques look good. Punches don't really have an impact. Techniques are drawn so simple and basic. It's like the first few chapters of the original manga. Techniques are at their best when their background is physical, like drawing of a bird or planet. But without that, you have just people shooting lights at each other. The combat in this series is not great. The worst in this series easily. No good flow to combat. It usually follows the rhyme of character gets attacked, then you see character get pushed back. You generally don't see more than 3 techniques being used, then fight is over. Very amateurish, like somebody only heard how shonen fights go instead of studying good ones. The original villains suck. They are simply charmless, uninteresting, repetitive, and forgettable. Even the main villain, while kinda fun, feels more and more limited as time goes on, unless they are saints. Specifically, goat saints that are being possessed. Those fights are great because you know the characters and feel the weight of battle. So even though the action is simple, it does enough with character to make things very tense. The art of techniques are drawn awesomely, so it's exciting and overall very enjoyable. The problem with that is, it makes this gap of quality and enjoyability between the goat saints and sonatas. The fights with goats are much more fun than the fights with the main characters that at times feels like filler. Another problem is, while I like all the girls well enough, I find it difficult to remember their names, and I blame that on the writing rather than me not paying attention. A lot of them just blend together and are not that interesting, and while I do like the MC here, possibly more than I do MCs in other words, she and the others kinda stop mattering at times and only becoming important because the plot pushes them to be. Alright, that's it. While I think the series' flaws hits harder than others, I'm really happy I read it and that it exists. It's a very charming and fun manga, and even though this might not technically be a magical girl or shoujo series, I can easily see it pulling into those crowds. So if I were to give my impressions a score, it would be a solid B. Alright guys, hope you liked this review. Like, subscribe, and tell me what you think. Next, I will finish with the spin-off with episode G.